Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you spend literally any time on social media, you know the vibe. You've seen the shimmering Dubai skyline, the five-star hotel suites, the private jets, and influencers living this life of absolute unfiltered luxury. But today, we are peeling back the curtain on the dark reality lurking just beneath that hyper-luxurious facade. We're going to examine a clandestine sector of extreme exploitation and systemic human trafficking, something you might have seen floating around online as the Dubai Porta Potty phenomenon. We're going to dive into the actual forensic evidence and the cold, hard data to separate viral internet rumors from a very real and very dangerous shadow economy. Here is the roadmap we're using today to break this all down. We'll start off with the influencer trap, then head inside the gilded cage, explore the African pipeline, analyze the forensic discrepancies and cover-ups, and finally, we'll look at a system of impunity. All right, part one, the influencer trap. We really need to desensitize this whole fetish. Okay, so that viral porta potty meme, people online often treat it like a gross urban legend, right? Just some sick joke about what ultra-wealthy people pay influencers to do. But in reality, it's actually a symptom of severe structural human rights abuses. These recruiters get on platforms like TikTok and Instagram and use classic love bombing tactics. They promise free flights, luxury jewelry like Van Cleef, and massive upfront payouts. We're talking sometimes 25 grand before the job even starts. But the dark reality when these women actually land, it's an absolute nightmare. We're talking confiscated passports, extreme physical and psychological degradation, and sudden, inescapable debt bondage. The financial architecture of these gatherings is honestly chillingly clinical. They put a precise, exact dollar amount on human degradation. For standard attendance, a victim might supposedly yield tens of thousands of dollars, but that comes with the coerced consumption of alcohol and illicit substances. Then there are these specialized fetishes, which is where the porta potty name actually comes from. These carry specific price tags and result in extreme humiliation and non-consensual filming, which, you guessed it, is then used to blackmail the victim so they can't leave. And horrifyingly, extreme physical abuse, like literal tooth extraction or being hung by metal hooks, is incentivized with massive bonuses. The psychology here isn't even just about sexual gratification. For these elite buyers, it's all about the absolute performance of dominance and power. Moving on to part two, inside the gilded cage. Let's look at the actual mechanics of control. So how does this operate on the ground? The operational playbook of accused traffickers, take Christy Gold, for example, a fugitive from Nigerian justice who openly flaunted her wealth in Dubai, is highly methodical. Victims are often lured in with what look like completely legitimate jobs, things like working in a high-end hair salon, retail, or restaurants. But upon arrival, it's a bait and switch. Their actual passports are confiscated, and they are issued fake ones. And these fakes are good enough to get past a hotel reception desk, sure, but completely useless for actually leaving the country. Then, the victims are suddenly hit with massive fabricated recruitment fees. If they resist, they face enforcers in overcrowded apartment torture rooms, where physical punishment and sexual assault are systematically used to break them down. But hey, the control isn't just physical, it is deeply, deeply psychological. A lot of victims are forced to take what's known as a juju oath. During these traditional African spiritual ceremonies, women are stripped naked, forced to kneel, and made to swallow noxious drinks. They're manipulated into believing that if they disobey their captors or even try to escape, they or their entire families will suffer madness, death, or generational curses. This profound psychological coercion is just a wildly powerful tool to ensure absolute silence and compliance. Which brings us to part three, the African pipeline. Let's talk about debt bondage and exploitation. A massive segment of the shadow economy directly targets women from East and West Africa, keeping them chained through staggering financial debts. While your standard, completely fabricated migrant debt hovers around $10,000, for victims trying to escape, those numbers can completely surge. Take Maria Kovalchuk, a Ugandan woman who tragically fell to her death from an Al-Barsha high-rise. She owed a staggering $27,000 to a trafficking ring. These insurmountable debts force women into not just sexual exploitation, but highly racialized abuse, where clients specifically paid premiums just to demean and hurl racist slurs at Black women. And this dehumanization, it spans across all nationalities trapped in this network. Ukrainian model Maria Kovalchuk described the erasure of her autonomy perfectly. She said, "They treated me like an object. They said, you belong to us, we can do what we want." Regardless of where the pipeline originates, the destination is exactly the same, the absolute erasure of human autonomy. That takes us to part four,
Forensic discrepancies and cover-ups. It's time to expose the lies.
To truly grasp the scale of the problem here, we have to look right past the official narratives. Let's trace the terrifying timeline of Maria Kovalchuk. On March 9th, 2025, she accepts a seemingly innocent invitation to a hotel party from some men she met at a karaoke bar, totally promised a flight on a private jet. But by March 11th, she misses her flight, the men become aggressive, and the forced confinement begins. Shockingly, days later on March 19th, she is found completely unconscious on the side of a Dubai road with massive trauma. Now this hit global news. The reports highlighted the sheer, horrific scale of her injuries. Yet, Dubai authorities very quickly closed the case, officially concluding she accidentally fell from a restricted construction site while trying to hide. And the suspects, who were connected to wealthy businessmen, were just released without charge. But here's where the official story completely falls apart. It directly contradicts the medical evidence. While Maria did have 3 spinal fractures, splintered legs, and broken collarbones, medical experts also noted she had tearing under her armpits, which is entirely consistent with being dragged. Most damning of all, her hair had been shorn with a knife, leaving her partially scalped. You don't accidentally scalp yourself with a knife during a fall. This absolutely points to intentional mutilation in a controlled environment before her body was dumped. Sadly, this isn't a one-off. It is a recurring pattern. Take the deaths of Ugandan victims Monic Karungi and Kayla Birungi. Both fell from high-rises, both officially ruled suicides. Police claim drugs were involved in Birungi's case, right? But independent lab tests, verified by the BBC, showed absolutely zero trace of alcohol or drugs in her system. It actually took an undercover investigation to finally unmask Charles Mwezigwa, a former London bus driver, as the ringleader of this illegal prostitution network, exposing these quote-unquote suicides as likely desperate acts to escape insurmountable debt, or possibly something even worse. Finally, Part 5, a system of impunity. Let's break down the legal trap. So why do these traffickers operate so brazenly right out in the open? Well, walk through this horrifying locked room legal trap with me. Imagine you're a victim. Step 1, you manage the impossible and finally escape your trafficker's abuse. Step 2, you run to the local police to report the rape or assault. Step 3, instead of helping you, the police arrest you. Under Sharia-influenced laws in the UAE, you can actually be charged with extramarital sex or indecency just for admitting to a sexual encounter outside of marriage, even if it was entirely non-consensual. Victims have literally walked into police stations begging for their lives, only to be thrown into jail cells themselves. To understand just how dire this situation is, listen to Radha Sterling, the CEO of the charity detained in Dubai. Her advice to tours and expats is chilling. I wouldn't report a rape there if I were raped myself. When the system actively punishes the victim and protects the honor and dignity of influential perpetrators, silence basically becomes your only survival mechanism. Traffickers completely weaponize this legal trap to operate with absolute impunity. So what is the big takeaway from today's explainer? We've looked at the data, the glaring forensic contradictions, and the systemic legal traps. This whole porta potty phenomenon isn't a joke. It's a very real manifestation of modern slavery, facilitated by social media and heavily protected by systemic impunity. As long as the illusion of a crime-free luxury destination is prioritized over actual human lives, we really have to ask, will Dubai's gilded cage ever truly be shattered? Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember to always keep questioning what you see on your feed.